I know what you're thinking. Where in the hell have I been? Um, yeah. Peace, y'all. I know it's been a minute since I've made a video on my YouTube. I really have been having the hardest time, like, where am I trying to go with this? Okay, so I know it's been a minute since I made a video, but today I felt called to talk about grieving and talk about like the process of grieving. How did I like get through the process? How did grieving look like for me when I lost my parents, and not even just my parents, just grieving in general. Like grieving can be a very challenging, I would say, feeling or emotion. And what's funny is that I got a notification just before I press play from the pattern. And if you're not really familiar with the pattern is pretty much like an app that it kind of like explains the patterns in your life that you've had since birth or you're still going through, and it kind of gives like a timeline of that. But that's like a brief description of what the pattern is. So yes, the pattern was ironic. They had a question of the day, and the question is there something or someone you've avoided grieving for? Wow. It's so beautiful how spirit just aligns things together to work out for me, because all day, not even all day, for a minute, I've been having this voice in my head tell me, you need to talk about grieving. Because as you can see, I'm still grieving. I'm still in my grieving process. It's never ending. Healing in general is not linear. Grieving in general is not like a perfection of how to grieve. So grieving is not like something that will just go away overnight. Grieving is more so like it's a process, just like your whole spiritual healing journey. It's all a process. With my experience with grieving, it started, I would say my grieving process started when I lost my father back in 2012 to cancer. I was still young. Like, I think when I lost my father, that was like, what, 2012? I was like 16 or 17 at the time when I lost my father. And it was kind of it. I could say at the time, at that moment in time in my life, it felt like I was in a movie. Like you're literally watching somebody deteriorate right in front of you, and you can't do nothing about it. You know, I feel like my father was the first death I've actually seen as a human. I've seen death in front of me, like, pets dying and stuff like that, which is still, a serious thing as well, because that can be traumatic too. But watching somebody that was close to you dying, and you really couldn't do anything about it, it's a roller coaster to me. And what's so funny is that what's funny is that now me and my father's relationship has gotten way better. And I'm gonna say this, regardless of if your parents have passed on, transitioned on, not even passed on, but transitioned on, or whether your parents are still alive, or you don't know your parents, take that time in yourself to heal that part of you. Because if you have parents or people or guardians that you were close to that really meant a lot to you, take that time for yourself to heal that part of you, heal that void. Because When I lost my father, this was the first death of somebody close to me that really like shook my foundation of who I was. I was a daddy's girl, so it was very challenging to lose that, you know, that part of you, the person that literally raised you, you know what I'm saying? So it was crazy. It was I remember seeing um like the obituary and seeing my poem that I wrote for my father in my obituary. And it kind of hit me at that moment when because when I wrote the poem for my father, I was in a very dark space, a very dark space, to where, like I said, it felt like it felt like I was in a movie. Like I was very numb to the situations that was going on around me. Like people were grieving, people were crying, or people were apologizing to me, people were confining in me to be that strong person for my mother, including my father. Before he died, my father was like, take care of your mother, be strong for your mother. And he kept saying that he was not going to be here. Everybody around him was like, he's going to make it. Even I knew he wasn't going to make it. As much as the reality, as much as people wanted to make it seem like, oh, your dad's going to make it. No, my dad had a severe cancer. He had a heart mass as well. So ain't no recovery from that, especially all the years that he like damaged his body. So I knew my dad was gonna pass. Like, as much as everybody around me was trying to you know, give me optimistic thoughts that, oh, he's gonna make it, you don't know that, don't worry. And I'm like, no, he's gonna leave. Because my dad knew. One thing when it comes to death, and one thing when it comes to people who are dying, they know when it's their time. Like, both of my parents knew their time was coming, especially my mother, who passed, well, transitioned in 2017 around a week before my birthday. And at the time when it came to both of my parents, I'm still grieving. I may not show it. I'm trying not to show it right now on camera because I'm probably going to have to get some tissue, because it's funny how today they just decided that I needed to talk about grieving, because sometimes, give me one moment. Okay. Because I knew I was going to cry sooner or later. So I got some tissue just in case. So, when I lost my mother a week before my birthday, I before even like this is the part that people will never understand, that makes this transition of my mother so powerful. Something happened around March of 2017 where I had two classmates mothers actually die in a week span. Now if you know about the Eyes of March, I suggest you to look that up. I think it's like Greek mythology back in high school that I learned about, beware the eyes of March, or things that come in threes. Yeah, so that time I was in school, I was in college at the time, and I was on social media. Next thing I know, I see one of my classmates' mother passed away, and I was like, damn, I feel so bad. That hurt me, right? So then a couple of days later, another classmate of mine's mother passed away that same week. And I'm like, what? I was in complete shock, because that shit happened like back to back. That happened back to back. And then next thing I know, a thought in my mind or a voice in my head was like, go see your mother. Go spend time with your mother. Go on spring break and go spend time with your mother. Call your mother, because it's her time. And I remember that voice so vividly. So I remember calling my mom and I was telling her like, "Hey mom, I want to come home. I want to come home for spring break and, hang out with y'all and blase blase." So she's like, "Oh, okay, that's exciting. That's great. I want to come spend time with you." So she comes to Savannah. At the time I was living in Savannah. So she comes down to Savannah and comes picks me up. And that's when she was telling me, at the time we were living in a hotel because the house was being fixed up and renovated and all that. That was, after the fact she picked me up and stuff. So I had to live in a hotel with my sister and my niece, and it was the most uncomfortable situation I've ever been in, but I made the best of it. I really adapt quickly to situations and environments, and I try my best to make the best out of whatever environment and situation I've been in, because all my life I was always in a very toxic, very unhealthy environment. So going back to the environment that made me sick, it was very intense. Especially when me and my mother really didn't have a very good relationship. Like, we was really working on our relationship once I left home and went to college. And then at the time when I came back home, me and my mom, the last time me and my mom hung out was at a Chinese restaurant. She was like, "Did you want to go do takeout?" Because at the time, I think I wanted, some Chinese food. And I didn't want to be in the hotel room with my sister. I just didn't. I wanted to get out and do something, because I just didn't want to sit in this hotel room all day not doing anything. And then called my mom and she picked me up and she was like, "Did you want to get it to go, or did you want to stay in the dining hall and eat?" I said, I wanted to dine in. And so she decided to do it with me. So we sat there for a little while, and it was kind of awkward, but I just enjoyed the time that I had with my mom. Even though our relationship was very rocky, I still love my mother to this day. And I just remember her getting her food and she was complaining about, I think, like something in the soup or whatever. Oh, she was trying to make fun of Chinese people and saying that they cook dog and cats and shit, but being very microaggressive. That's neither here nor there. Uh, yeah. So that day, I remember that day vividly. And it's crazy how fast life can really hit you. I remember that day, then her dropping me off, and I remember crying that whole day and night. The next thing I know, I got woken up at like 5 in the morning saying, "Brianka, mom's in the hospital. We're coming to get you. Be dressed by the time we get there." So I was like, it's happening. When we got to the hospital, she had the biggest smile on her face. Like, I feel like this is what I've been avoiding. That's why I'm like, the pattern knew today. The pattern, my spirit guides, my intuition, my higher self, my ancestors, they knew today I needed to grieve, because I have been avoiding this, and I admit, I'm being very transparent right now. I admit that I've been avoiding grieving and doing my shadow healing, because I've been so angry lately. But now I'm getting to, I'm adjusting to the new openness that I'm having. the new openness that I'm having, the vulnerability that I'm having right now with talking about grieving, because I knew this was going to be the moment where I needed to show up for myself and show up in a way where I don't usually show up as as not even as myself, but as my authentic self, as my vulnerable self, just expressing and showing who I am. So that day when I saw my mom in the hospital, I found out she had another aneurysm because my mom's first aneurysm was when I was 3 years old. I remember that vividly too. As much as people thought I didn't remember, I remembered that too because I was crying that day too. And just for God to just bless her to see 58, that was just a blessing in the sky for me. Just for her to see me go off to school and live my life. It was, she knew that I was going to be okay. When I told my mom I was making the decision to move out and transfer to Savannah State, she knew right then and there, her and God knew right then and there that I was going to be okay. No matter the trials and tribulations and the situations I've been in the past. Oh, Lord. I'm just so grateful for my mother. I'm grateful to have her as an ancestor. I'm grateful to have my father as an ancestor because without them, I would be so lost. I already knew I was gonna mess up this makeup, but it's okay. It's okay. I am okay. They knew that sooner or later I was gonna talk about this because I've been preparing myself to get back into doing the things that I love, which is creating content for my YouTube channel, getting my business back, which I am gonna also do a video, an update video on that as well. But yeah, today I just knew the question of the day is what have I been avoiding grieving, or if it's someone or something that I've avoided grieving about, which was grieving about my past, grieving about shedding the old self, my old self, shedding the past, my inner traumas, my childhood traumas, shedding away that. Grieving is however you feel, because you can just 1 minute just stand there talking to somebody normally and a whiff of their perfume, or somebody can speak something that reminds you of them. Like lately, I've been having that happen where I would randomly smell my mother, or I would randomly hear my father talking, or I would or somebody would like say something to me that sounded like something my father would say. Or sometimes I'll like have my moments where if I'm really in a very deep inner child healing moment, I can feel somebody putting their arms around me and hugging me and telling me everything's okay. So yeah, I didn't mean to ramble. Well, I don't feel like I rambled. I feel like it naturally flows with what I'm talking about. But back to talking about when I lost my mom. Yeah, she was smiling. Like she was just telling everybody she's good, she's okay. But I knew right then and there. With her having another aneurysm and it was leaking. And this is why when I really look at astrology and look at my birth chart and how I really have, like, my mom was a Leo. I'm literally a Leo moon. Like my emotions are literally how my mother felt when she tried to express herself. And forgiving someone that really traumatized you as a child, but also had to raise you. And the grieving process of losing your parents. One hard pill I literally had to swallow was your parents were humans too. Regardless of how you wanted to label them, your parents did the best they could with what they had. They did not know how to grieve. They did not know how to articulate or manage their emotions. All they knew was you got to work hard for what you desire. You got to do what's best for your kids. You got to provide for your kids. You got to sit here and feed your kids, clothe your kids, go to school and do and get a better career. And this is at the time where where the 70s, 80s and 90s were very, very traumatic to live in. Because my father was 60 when he passed. My mother was 58. So they were both born in 1950 and 1958. Like, they grew up in a time where they did not know how to grieve, how to deal with emotions. All they knew was how to provide and how to provide for their kids. How to survive and how to provide for their kids. How to live through a bullshit ass matrix and live in a way where it's comfortable for your kids to have something for them in the past when you're gone. That's the only things my parents knew how to do. They didn't know how to really love, because as a child that grew up with a somewhat narcissistic mother and a father who was emotionally unavailable, it's in a time and place where you got to like separate your parents from being that label of a parent and looking at them as a human being that did not know. They didn't know. And that part is where you forgive yourself. You forgive yourself for not knowing. I mean, as a kid, you don't really know stuff about how to cope with emotions. You know how to cope with them with alcohol, with drugs. You know how to suck that shit up and pull your shit up at your pull your feet, your socks at your bootstraps, or whatever the metaphor is. And you wasn't really told how to decipher if you're angry or if you're just irritated with something somebody said. And you as a child, you really wouldn't know how to manage your emotions. So I had to forgive my parents for doing the best that they knew how, because that's all they knew. And I had to forgive myself, because that was the only way I would be able to forgive my parents. And sometimes they will literally use they would literally use music to connect with me. Most of the time they would literally use sometimes when I go on social media, sometimes they would literally use that, or they would just be they would just communicate to me through my thoughts. Sometimes it's just, I'm just grateful to have my parents as my ancestors. I really am, because without them, I wouldn't be who I am today. And one thing that I've told people in person, but I've never said on like camera. People always ask me, how could you have your mother's funeral on your birthday? And my answer would always be, she gave birth to me. At the time, that was my answer. At the time when I lost my mom, that was my answer. She gave birth to me, so what do I look like being selfish on the day that she gave me birth, So now, in that time and moment in my life, that's how I felt. But now it's like her death was the death of me. But it was a death of me to let go of. But this is my rebirth. When I laid my mother to rest on my birthday, that was my rebirth. That was the rebirth of who Brianka is today. And it's been a long time coming. Through realizing that my anger was really depression, and most of that anger came from within my womb because of my mother giving her trauma into me. And I had to dig for so many years after my mom passed, and I had to dig out her roots. I had to dig out my grandmother's roots. I had to dig out all that emotional trauma that they have never let themselves express. to now I'm finally getting to a point where I'm feeling my own traumas that I am uprooting. No longer my mother's, no longer my grandmother's, just mine to uproot. And it's been years, y'all. I like when they say when your awakening happens is not something cute. It's not something that's supposed to be cute. It's not something that's supposed to be sexy. You're not supposed to look sexy when you're healing. That's the after effect of healing. That's the after effect. Once you heal that part and you pull that root out, the after effect of that, it was like I shedded so much. And it's not even just spiritual. Like when you shed, you spiritually shed, but your body physically shows that you've been shedding. I've lost so much weight. And it's not even funny. Like I've lost so much weight during my healing process that it became a physical thing. But first it was spiritual, then emotions, then physical. That's how my grieving process would go. My grieving process was always anger. It was either sadness or anger. Because half the time you're in denial. You're in denial that the person that you really love the most is really gone. And that's when the process happened. I remember when I finally started to grieve over my father. Like for the last 5 years, I was not grieving over my father because at the time in my mind, I was thinking, okay, I think I'm done grieving over my father. I don't really feel his presence anymore. I don't know what's going on. So I just thought that, he didn't really want a connection with me right now. So I took it upon myself to just be like, I didn't realize after the years of not grieving over my father that one day, I love how the birds are chirping because they're just telling me that my ancestors are around. I just remember when I was living in Maryland, I remember one day I was meditating so heavy that I started to cry through my meditation. And then I came to realize it was because I was trying to run away from grieving about my father. And I remember kept hearing Otis Redding because that's my father's favorite artist is Otis Redding. And I remember hearing a particular song. I don't remember exactly which song it is, but it's Otis Redding in general. And as soon as I played it, I just felt every tidal wave of emotions that I've never faced come at me so hard. Like boom, 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 boom. And I was crying. I remember that day like it was yesterday. I was crying my eyes out for the whole day. My uncle didn't know what was going on with me. I just knew I just had to cry and listen to Otis Redding so loud that my uncle could not hear me crying and screaming in my pillow and all of that. And then I wake up the next day and I cried again. Like, this is what I'm saying, y'all. The grieving process, don't stop yourself from grieving. Because when you do, you will have damn near 2 days, 3 days, damn near a week crying over somebody or something that you did not let yourself cry about at the time. And this was years of grieving that I have harbored and I never let go of. Now imagine holding that in your womb for years, holding that in your heart for years, because you had all this other stuff in the way. All this other trauma in the way that probably wasn't even yours, that you had to keep letting go, keep flowing out. And then all of a sudden, now you get to your grieving. Because as a woman, all your grieving and anger and trauma is in your womb. It's in your womb. It's in your yoni. It's in your heart. That's why your throat, your heart, your solar, and your sacral chakra and your root chakra are all connected to grief, to anger, to sadness, to manifestations, to anything, like any emotion that you can think of, jealousy, resentment, All of that is all here. It can be all here in your shoulders, your breasts, your chest, your stomach, your yoni. It can be up here sometimes in your crown chakra, but that's if you're an overthinker like me. But most of my grieving comes from my lower chakras, and that's where most of my movement, my energy comes in. It's never coming from up here. It's always coming from the root up for me. I don't know about anybody else, but personally, that's what I've felt like lately. Yeah, that's what I felt like lately, is that everything comes from the root up. And I realized after, I'm getting hot. I realized after a while, I started to feel his presence again. And now it's just, their presence is always known. They'll do it in a song, mainly Maze and Frankie Beverly. I want y'all to take the time out your day to look at a picture of anybody, or look at a picture of your younger self, and just look at her or him, and just look at whoever that you cared about. Remember the times that you had with them and think about those times. Grieve when you need to. Cry when you need to. Let that anger out when you need to. It's all a part of shadow healing. It's all a part of shadow work. It's all a part of you. Grieving can be 1 minute that you're happy to see the person's face. The next minute you be crying and angry that they left you. But they didn't they physically left their body, but they're still here. They just had to go through a transitional phase of realizing the tests and the lessons that they did not do. And now they have, and especially if you had people who brought trauma onto you, they have to do right by you in order for them to move on. And sometimes that can be the hard part, when you've had all this time to talk about your trauma to the person that caused it, but they're no longer here. Oh, journaling. I'm a huge fan of journaling, but I know I'm gonna admit that I don't really do it as often as I'm supposed to be doing it. But journaling out how you feel about somebody is the best thing to do, and burning it after that. Reading it out loud, it's like you can write it out, right? And because I remember the times in that time in my life, because at the time when my mom passed, our house, like I said, our house was still renovated. I had to live in a hotel room. I was semi-homeless for a while. I had to live in a hotel room about 2 months. I had to figure out how I was going to go to school, because at the time my family really wasn't being supportive like they were supposed to. They weren't really trying to help me get to school. And so at the time I had to figure out how, to get there. And luckily, by the grace of God, I had a cousin at the time rent out a car for us to take me back to school. And by the grace of God, I graduated. Because at that time in my life, I was really I was going through it. And I may do a video on that as well. I have to look at my list again of videos that I said I was going to do when I get back on here, So, yeah, it's journaling and actually making an altar for your parents, and actually sitting down, or you can just sit down in the mirror or sit outside, put your feet in the ground. That's communicating with them as well. Pour your water out pour your water, libations. You can do water, alcohol, whatever your parents used to drink when they was here, whatever your guardian, whoever it is that you're grieving over, yeah, pour out your water, libations, whatever. speak among them, talk to them, communicate with them, because they've never left us. They physically left us, but they're always here for us to talk to. Now, because I'm saying this, I'm still being accountable, because I know I haven't been doing the things that I'm supposed to be doing. And yeah, that's why they got my ass today. That's why they got me today, talking about grieving. And now that I fully have been open and being vulnerable, I really hope that this video helps somebody or anybody. I pray that this video gets to the masses that need it. I give thanks to those who watched the video, and I give thanks to the ones who have not given up on me, who still supports me to this day. Thank you to the subscribers, to the new subscribers that I also gotten as well. If you like this video, thumbs it up. If you like this video, share it with a friend, share it with somebody that you know that needs to see how it looks to still be grieving, because at the end of the day, all this makeup don't mean a thing. But you know, grieving is not linear. Grieving is something that you just have to keep moving through and let go. Accept at the moment. You can sit with it, but then let it go. It's always an ebb and flow when it comes to your healing, your spiritual journey. So I pray that your healing be the best thing that actually helps you transmute all the grievings and traumas from your past. And Nashe, so shall it be. I hope you guys have a blessed day, evening, night, or morning whenever you watch this video. This is Brianka, aka Unique Wildflower, aka Heals with Love, signing off. Peace, y'all.